Hello and welcome to this chapter where we'll talk about the delayed Benoni. First of all, this chapter is some kind of a complement, like an addition to the course, once you know more or less the rest of the course. Why is that? Because after d4, knight f6, c4, c5, d6, here we go for e6, which is the main line. But I felt it was very efficient for you to also know this g6. Why is that? This line allows us to dodge two of the most critical lines, which are f4, because here f4 is not spherosome because we are delaying ed5, so basically bishop b5 check is not happening. And we are also dodging bishop f4, e3, h3, which I consider one of the main critical lines. So only for that I felt it was very efficient to also know this line. But I want also to state that this is not fully an alternative, because you need to know many variations that are shown in the course. Why is that? Because at some point, let's say we want to play bishop g7, e4, d6, and let's say white plays like normal stuff. Okay, let's assume this position. Here we might face cd5. So basically this is shown in the main line of the Benoni. So a lot of the lines can transpose to the main line of the Benoni. For instance, white can also play, like, for instance, I don't know, with a pawn on e2, can play knight f3, and after d6 can play knight d2, castle, e4, e6, bishop e2. And here, for instance, taking with the pawn and white taking with this one would be very awkward, because this knight is left without a square here. But white obviously can afford to play cd, so basically it will already transpose to the main line, which is knight a6 here in this case. So again, this is a complementary chapter. It can be very helpful to straightforward avoid those lines if you don't remember, if you don't fancy, if you want to have some more practical stuff. It's also very interesting. And first of all, I wanted to say that. And second of all, I wanted to state, okay, you might have the question here. Why is not everyone playing this line? Yeah, like, why not? We are preventing two of the most critical lines. So the usual reason why we are not playing this line is that white gets the chance to play e4 prior to us taking on d5. And what does that imply? This implies that white has the extra chance to take with the e-pawn. And the problem with this pawn structure is that we don't have the usual counterplay of the Benoni. Basically, we cannot have b5 easily, as white has too much control of b5. And also the symmetry kind of gives more space to white, and we have a bit less. And if we don't manage to exchange a couple pieces, we might be having some kind of trouble. Yeah, because the queen side, again, we still have the same problems as the normal Benoni, that we need to exchange one of these two, or at least solve them. So basically, white can have the chance to play more solid positions, so that's why it was regarded as a suboptimal version of it. But I feel it has a lot of good aspects of it, and usually white doesn't have much experience in these structures, taking with the e-pawn at all. So it's quite likely that every time you play it, it's the first time your opponent face it. And yeah, I had a lot of experience with white, specifically as well. I faced it a lot this time. And I did not see that it was easy at all to play this position, because the symmetry also makes it so white doesn't have a straightforward plan with e5. But white needs to understand and navigate strategically this position, which is not obvious at all, because there is no direct push with pawns. There is no space or plan like, okay, I want to do this, I want to put the pieces here. It's more about, I want to know what black needs to do and then react into it. So after all this introduction, let's gonna briefly check what white can do. Yeah. First of all, we're gonna start with f3. This is also shown in a different chapter when white can play some kind of sidelines or move 2 or something. But here, after e6, e4, the main idea for white is to place the knight on c3 before doing anything else, so then bishop e2 and castle is available for white. Why would white want to do this? If you check the chapters where f3 is analyzed, the main line, you understand that white has some kind of strategical issue with these two pieces. They both want to develop through the same square, and basically you have a combination of possible results. If you want to put the knight on g3 first and then move the bishop, you will be facing h5, and then the knight is under attack. If you want to play bishop d3 first and then move the knight, yeah, let's put this brown color, let's say now, then you will face that we will play knight d7, knight d5, and we will have the chance to exchange a couple pieces. So we will be very happy. So with knight d2 and then knight c3, white delays the development of the queen side, but usually the problem is the king side. And then this knight can later on go to c4, and the bishop goes to e2, and actually it's more pleasant development. But here my take is that, okay, we could take on d5 and play this position, but white kind of got what he wanted, or she wanted. So here I really love a6, which is a very fun way to mess around with the move order, and also it's a very typical line in the Benoni, in the delayed Benoni. You can also tease a lot of opponents here, because you're kind of forcing to a5, and also in general terms, not specifically here, but let's say white played h3 and knight f3 variation, yeah, and bishop d3. You can also tease white to play a6, to play a4, because white wants to take with the c pawn, let's say, and now close the position with e5 in general. And it's interesting that these strategical ideas, suddenly white doesn't have the usual, let's say, a3 before, or the flexible structure on the queen side. This always has been an idea. Here is not the case. We don't want to play e5. We want to get use this weakness on the dark squares, but this is an idea that you could play against all the other variations, which is very interesting. Yeah? And also it makes a lot of sense if you are a King's Indian player, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, you can work around with that. But here knight h5 is very straightforward, and white is in severe danger already. If g4, basically we do check, and knight g3, and we would be just, the king is just too frail. It's very important that we do not take on d5, because if white retake on d5, now bishop b5 check would be possible, yeah? So yeah, the Benoni, you always have some kind of justification for each move. That's also easier to remember everything, yeah? You just don't play like without effort. So here white has this secret counter trick that can be tricky, yeah? And bishop e3 makes a lot of more sense, as queen h4, bishop f2. And now we can take an f5. And basically, since white doesn't have the knight on the king side and has spent a couple of tempos, we can create some troubles. Now f4 is somewhat of a threat, and after knight d7, knight d5, we have maybe the dreamed blockade, and later on we'll push on the king side. But also here after queen d2, that white tries to prevent that, we have this funny sacrifice, and after giving up the exchange, we play g5. And now we castle, and we have more or less the same outcome, and we have a lot of presence on the dark squares. And white might even have a lot of trouble castling, because we are having bishop d4. Let's say, bishop b2, here white delays the castle. Even here it could be interesting to play knight e5, because white might feel safe to play this move, but now knight g4 would be very strong. Bishop d4 is not avoidable. So again, white has a lot of trouble like developing and getting the pieces out. So yeah, it's a very interesting strategical sacrifice for you to know. So going to more main lines, knight c3, and now bishop g7, and now white obviously wants to get space in the center. White can also try to play knight f3 and h3 and transpose to the other variations, but here after d6, again, now bishop f4 is kind of stupid, yeah? Because we still are not committed to e6, and here even e5 could be interesting, as these kind of structures, you need to know that this is somewhat fishy for white, like our development is very, very fast, and sometimes these sacrifices happen in the King's Indian. So yeah, it's also good to know for you. But here we have a very nice counterplay in the queen side with b5, and white is actually even worse, I would say, because knight b5, that looks like, okay, black is not even like breaking our pawn chain. Why should be worried? Knight e4. And we make use of white is spending like a couple tempi here away from the queen side. And now after something like queen c1, knight d7, the rook b8 is coming, the queen a5 is coming. And white wants to develop the bishop through here, through e3. But after e3, this bishop will get out of the pawn chain. And actually, it would mean that the queen side is much, much weaker. So white already is having some troubles having an optimal development. White is even much worse. And if white tries to take, we play a6. And basically we have a Volga that white did a plan that it's not really a thing. Yeah, like the bishop usually wants to stay on c1 to defend b2. So white would likely lose a couple tempi. Now queen a5. We want to take a b5. Since this pawn would be pinned and this knight is pinned, we would win the pawn, so white needs to play bishop d2. Now we take, this pawn is pinned, now we take, queen b6, and basically white is having a lot of trouble defending d5. Now we just bishop b7 and we will regain back the pawn. Now after knight c3, white wants to play e4, so we here create some havoc in white's position, because after bishop a6 we don't allow e4, we are also threatening somewhat bishop c4 and bishop b3 or take the pawn. And basically, if white tries to do something like this, we can exchange, and now knight d7, c4, knight c5. This is a great version of the Volga, basically. We won a couple tempi for free, and white is very late on development. Like white also invested a tempo in h3, which usually white already has g3, king g2. So basically, we're at 2 tempo up. And in general, this structure, the rook goes here, we pressure here, the knight goes here, and yeah, we have... I mean, the Volga is also good to know the plans of the Volga. Yeah, I mean, no one will play bishop f4, but it's good for you to understand why and what is the approach of this setup. So white will play e4 likely, and after d6, white has many different approaches. First of all, f4, which is the most worrisome in the other case, here is not dangerous at all because white doesn't have bishop b5 check. So basically, bishop e2 or bishop d3 would transpose to the variations explained in the first chapter. So that's why I say this is complementary. Like here is not obviously not covered again, and here we only talk about d takes e6. This is a line I played a lot with white actually when I was young, and I played the 4 pawns variation. It was very much fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun against. If you know your opponent only plays 4 pawns, it's very good to play this move order, I would say, because it prevents bishop b5 check, which is maybe the most troublesome. And this one, it was dangerous many years ago, but now black kind of solved it together. Really, we take with the pawn, and after bishop d3, the only plan you need to know that I actually managed to achieve many games is to play knight g5 and at some point e5. And when the knight gets away, we have this knight h takes h7, king takes, the queen checks here thanks to the pin, and bishop takes g6, and we are mating. And white is mating, sorry, not we. But yeah, this is just a dream. Like in reality, white is very late, and the pawns are not easy to push. Like, let's take this position. And here knight d4 was the main line. And here I found a very creative idea that makes a lot of sense. We don't want to play e5 here, since f5 is a possibility, and white is very much happy to make it. Like, it's pressuring the queen side, the king side, the bishop is coming out. Also, we are not sure what to do with the bishop, so it's fine here for now. And here we have this funny idea, which is b6. That I wasn't sure what to recommend here, but man, b6 looks so nice. Now we will play rook b8, rook b7, and the rook maybe goes to e7, but maybe just stays on b7. And basically we help everything through the second rank, and later on we can maybe look for d5, look for a6, b5, maybe look for knight d4, for e5, I don't know, everything. But we just improve the pieces and we wait for white to mess up, yeah? And yeah, okay, it was my pet line when I was a child, but now it's just trash, I guess. And g3 is another different approach, but now we can play e5, as f5 is not possible anymore. And we will play knight d4, this bishop will develop, like, it's some kind of a weird symmetry that white doesn't have anything special. So yeah, this f4 variation suddenly becomes trivial to refute, I'd say. or to play against it. So yeah, that's a great advantage to have this extra option. That's why I included this chapter here. So white can have a different approach here. Let's say bishop d3 followed by knight g2, which is one of the setups we talked about. And if we take with the e-pawn here, I really have to love knight g4. Straightforward here. The idea is to play f5 and basically get the e4 square and get some space in the center. And okay, not immediately f5, but this knight can reroute to e5. And for instance, white usually wants to play f4 to prevent us from doing this, but after f5, we kind of block everything, but white pieces don't make any sense because the knight wants to go to f4. So here, let's say h3, knight e5, and white doesn't really have a solution here. White doesn't want to commit to b3. Maybe we can just exchange the bishop pair and then bring the other knight around, and we have enough space for the rest of the pieces again. Yeah, so it's very important to play knight g4 because ideally white wants to play knight g3, h3, f4, f5. So another option, another way to approach this position would be to just play knight e8 at some point and play f5 whenever white plays f4. Because if we get too fast into f5, we may get into trouble into the light squares. So yeah, it's just you need to know that knight g3, f4, f5 would be great for white. It will be a great push, and then the bishop will come and a lot of pressure on the king side. So yeah, I mean, it's not tricky. You just need to know it. And again, I insist, if white takes with the c-pawn, you need to go and check the other chapter. That's why this is a complement. Yeah, it's not a dangerous line per se, but you understand my point, right? And the same thing here with knight g2, for instance. Yeah, and yep, white has this extra option with h3. I think this is the main line, I would say, against this setup. And you have a lot of options here after e6, knight f3, and now we take, and now ed5. This is a very popular line, and here we have different approaches to justify it. The funniest, let's start with the funniest, which is rook e8 check. Here white wants to play bishop e3. And here bishop h6 might be tempting, and after castling, taking here. But white gives up a pawn, and if we take on e3, we might lose very soon. Like queen d2, the queen goes here, the rook goes, and knight g5, and basically we are getting mated. So the idea here is that white has a terrible pawn structure, but we have a terrible piece here. For instance, the bishop on c8 is awful. Is awful against the white light squared pawn structure. Like it collides against everything. Doesn't have any way to get to an active diagonal to exchange for a piece, and that's why it's tricky to face this position, because objectively you might think, okay, we have the e5 square, we're gonna defend everything, but this bishop takes his time to get into some decent position, maybe to e8 to defend the only weak point, like white usually wants to double the rooks. And then it can be happy, like here, for instance, queen e7, e4, now it's important for white. This is more or less the plan, queen d2, queen h6, double the rooks on the f file, knight d7, knight d5. And here, ideally, we want to play like rook e8, knight e8, and play against these two pieces, because these two pieces are kind of stuck in the light squares as well. So so time goes in our favor, let's say. In this case, we have a stupid piece, but the rest of are amazing. And actually, if we manage to put the knight on d5 and the bishop on e7, on d7, we would be even in the driving seat, I would say. So white needs to keep playing with initiative to make use of this weak pawn with knight b5 or this pressure on the file. And here this is a very precise line with knight b5, rook d8, and there is this trick with knight d6. I mean, this is the only line that white needs to do something or we are winning strategically, so yeah. And here, if e5, we have knight d5, and basically we exchange everything, like here, okay, looks dramatic for a second, but king h6, and okay, this bishop is getting out, so we shouldn't be worried. Or maybe you can even just play b5 to free everything, yeah, like we are a pawn up after all. So rook af1, the idea is that we cannot move. And bishop f5 is a really creative way to sacrifice the piece. And after ef g5, and look at this bishop. And look at this amazing blockade in the dark squares. And suddenly, okay, this was actually a game between two grandmasters here in Catalonia. And I wouldn't be happy with white, for sure. Because if you exchange too many rooks, you might be even losing here, yeah? Okay, I mean, it's not... I guess it's just balanced. I don't think it's white. Black has an option to win easily, but if we manage to play h5, h4, and then maybe look for knight h5, king f6, maybe the knight can go through the dark squares. I don't know. Might be interesting, yeah? Also pay attention that our rooks are a bit passive yet, so yeah, don't get too crazy going for the win. So yeah, that's why, I mean, I only want to give you some takes. I don't wanna, doesn't make any sense that I give you a very deep analysis here. This line is tricky, but if you play precisely, you are fine, kinda-ish. And white, usually in my experience, is very hard for white to attack properly. Yeah, I faced this position many times with white, like 3-4 times. And yeah, and never play precisely enough. Like, it's very risky because black just wants to defend everything and have a better pawn structure. So here, there is this extra option with this rook e3, which was, I think, yeah, it was firstly tried by Klaus Bishop. Actually, he's a teammate in Germany, and I didn't know. It was fun to see it, and then was popularized again thanks to Morozevich. And recently, there is a guy, maybe you know him. It's Richard Rapport. I don't know, just a fancy guy that lately has been playing quite a lot of Benoni and actually delayed Benoni. And he was choosing this move. Yeah. What is the idea? The idea is that white has a terrible control of the light squares, of the dark squares, and we might be even having a greater time having the bishop instead of the rook, the g7 bishop. For instance, here, the first blunder is e4 that many players play to defend this move. We are already much better, I would say. Because now we play knight d7, we play knight d5, we play knight h5, and we get the hang of all the dark squares. And these two pieces are completely irrelevant, and our bishop is much better than the rook on f8, let's say. And white has a lot of trouble in the king side because our knight is just flowing through the position and the bishop as well. And the queen might come later. And white doesn't really have much space for the rooks to create any kind of threat, any open files. So this is a great example of how a closed position can be harmful for the rooks. And yep, and white needs to give up the pawn. Again, we don't want to take it. We want to develop. And here, after queen d2, here I have a lot of analysis. Well, I give some of the main lines. Objectively, white is better, objectively. But in practice, it's so difficult. I have a couple model games for you to show how white can get wrong very easily. Here, after 92, bishop h6, you will see. And here, black managed to win very convincingly in a classical game. So you see that this line is not a joke. And here, for instance, if white plays rook f2, now we just play knight f6 and we want to push h5, and suddenly, again, white has too many pieces that are not really useful and are doing nothing in the light squares, and we are creating havoc on the queen side. Here the problem of rook f1 maybe was knight g3, and white is not allowed to get any kind of pressure here. And the knight here does marvelous job. Yeah? Now we finish the development, likely with bishop d7, rook e8. I don't know. And here, knight g4 is straightforward is the best move. And after knight g3, rook f2, h5. White wants to play h4. Black wants to play h4. And here knight d2. And here I recommend the approach of b5. We don't really care about knight g3 losing this pawn because we have other compensation, but we want to open this column, no matter what. So basically the main line is take, a6, take, and here taking and knight f6, for instance, we threaten knight d4. Basically, we're almost winning material. We have a decent compensation. And yeah, after bishop b7, we might even take this pawn, and white is left with a very awkward position. We have all the dynamics in our favor. So here the best move is rook e2 for you to know. And here rook b8 is very interesting. And after a4, I really like knight e5. And here we want to play bishop d7. I mean, it's risky because we push the pawn to the 6th. But since this pawn is alive, white doesn't really have anything to push it. And now we get rook b4 or rook b2 and out of pressure here. And it's a messy position. Again, I want to insist, objectively, white is better. So it's not a line that you should play all the time, but in Blitz is amazing, this line. Yeah? It's very hard in practice to face it. And even that I have a lot of experience with white, facing it in Blitz or Rapid is very difficult. It's very difficult, as you need to play very precise, and black only has a couple moves all the time. Yeah. So yeah, this rook e3 is fun. Also, I want to add this queen e8 check. I mean, this was a very fun move that, I mean, it's not good per se, like king f1 or queen e2 are good answers, but if white plays bishop e3, which is kind of normal, we actually gain a whole tempo here with queen e7, or knight e7, let's say. And we play knight e5 in one take, and usually black wants to play rook e8 before and check, and then play rook f8 later on to defend f7. So here we already got everything. We already got the queen on the e file, so basically we can retake and we get 2 tempi for free. I feel it's a good try in Blitz and Rapid, and maybe in Classical, because it's new ideas in theory usually rely on common knowledge. The common knowledge here is that white plays bishop e3 and gives up a pawn and is good. But here we take advantage of that knowledge and we play it against us. So here, for instance, rook e1 is a bit smarter, which doesn't look obvious to me. And here queen e2 and king f1 are a bit better, which doesn't look obvious to me. So yeah, I mean, I just want to suggest a move here. Yeah? We have another some other lines here, but mostly the most relevant is bishop e2. And after e6, white has a couple ideas. Bishop g5, also very important from the King's Indian, which is with bishop e2 and bishop g5. And here we want to play e6 quickly, yeah, because we want to transpose to the main lines. We don't want to delay as much. And we open ourselves to some weird ideas with h4. So yeah, e6 quickly here is important, I would say. Bishop g5, we take, I mean, taking with d5 with a knight. I mean, this pawn looks weak, but we need to take into account that this bishop doesn't work very well with these pawns, and white is very weak in the dark squares as well in the center. So we don't mind that much. Our development is very, very easy. And for instance, let's say white takes everything and plays knight f3. We would be very happy actually to have this kind of position, let's say, and now take on here, now play knight c6, and we will get a very nice square for the knight that even if we have this delayed pawn, it doesn't matter. Like no one would ever be able to kick our knight. We have a lot of initiative. Yeah? So ed5, and this is what makes sense. And now h6, because in case of castle, queen d2 now might be an extra option that is annoying, and we cannot kick this bishop anymore. So, and there is not, I mean, white did not commit to f3. If you recall of that of the chapter with f3 ideas, we usually had this knight e4, queen h4 check idea, but here is not the case. So yeah, we sneak h6, and after bishop e3, we castle, and now king h7. And now white plays h3. Why? Because white wants to, again, fight this bishop. Usually if knight f3 of this stuff, we can play bishop g4, and we are very happy. We exchange a couple pieces, we don't have problems. We are safe. Yeah, this is more or less the goal. So after h3, rook e8, bishop d3, white wants to, again, white is facing, is fighting against this bishop. Yeah, and here again, when we are not allowed to do anything, we strike with counterplay. I love it because it's always the same. If we cannot do anything, we just break it through. Because for instance, knight d7 would be countered easily with knight f3, and yeah, this could be an option. This looks like it solves something in the short term, but now how do we really develop this bishop? Because bishop d7 is facing bishop f4, and we are losing the d6 pawn. So yeah, we still did not solve all the problems, and after bishop f4, rook e1, or maybe f4, f5 is also an option, f4, g4, f5. I mean, it's not that easy. We want to exchange the light square bishop if possible, but okay. And now after b5, we have a lot of compensation now. If we take here, knight d7 is great. Now we want to play knight b6, bishop b7, or knight d5, depending on what white plays. I mean, we have a lot of initiative, and the pawn will likely fall because we are threatening with 3 pieces and white doesn't have an easy way to defend them. And after knight b5, knight d4, the thematical counterplay. In case of queen c2, we have this fancy move, which is knight g3, as this bishop is loose, and now we would have a great compensation on the dark squares. And in case of queen c1, which is a bit more creative, now bishop f1 looks amazing. We are kind of threatening knight g3 again. We are kind of threatening knight that takes f2 as well, some creative stuff, and white is very late on development. So here bishop e4 looks very reasonable. And here we are threatening the pawn. Yeah, and here rook c1, a6, white is forced to bring the knight here to defend the pawn. And now I really love queen h8. Looks so smooth, like looks like everything is working, yeah. And after rook b1, bishop f5, and man, look at these bishops and look at the queen, like it's amazing. I love it. I love it. When I found it analyzing, man, I was delighted, like, man, I need to share this. I need to share it. And yeah, basically, again, the dynamics always works, and if white wants to prevent everything, we are very happy to face it. Because here, against, let's say, knight f3, castle, castle, here we could go for bishop g4. But what I don't like about it is that after castle, castle h3, this position in concrete, I actually figure out the best plan for white, which is not easy. But hear me out. So here with black, we want to play knight e8 and f5. Why? Because we exchange the light square bishop, and we want to get some space on the dark squares, on the light squares. Yeah, now we will play knight d7, knight d5, knight f6. But the problem here is that the position is so solid that we don't have anything active. I mean, we exchange the bishops, but nothing else. Yeah, we give up the c8 bishop, but we don't have nothing else. So one thing I discovered with white, which is not that obvious, is that after knight e8, white has a very long plan, which is g3, king g2, queen c2, bishop d2, bishop e2, and then rook e1, and then bishop d1, and then since we played f5, then knight e2 and knight f4, and go for the square. And later on, keep improving. Maybe later on g4 or maybe h4, don't know. But the problem is that we cannot do anything. And since I already recommend this in my course with white, I cannot. I mean, you can try, but yeah, you could try. Play it, but I feel it's hard for white to fuck up. It's likely that white will play f4 and you will end up drawing because you don't have much space for anything else, really, for anything active. So yeah, that's why here castle is the most convenient plan, and we want to play somewhat of bishop f5 and knight d4, or maybe rook e8 and knight d4, and then have room for this knight on f6. This is more or less the idea. And here bishop f5, and here white has some precision moves. Here, for instance, if bishop d3, now bishop g4 is very fun, but now it works very well. It's funny, we lost a couple tempi, but the idea is that here we are getting a lot of initiative because we are allowed to play knight h5, which is a move we did not have before. And now after queen h4, bishop e5, f5, we get the seize of the dark squares on the king side. Even here, like for instance, if white tries to take, this is great. This is amazing. We are threatening c4, our knight can increase the pressure, the rook is coming, the king might later on give room for the bishop. I mean, this is very dangerous. Even here against f4, we could even try to strategically win the game with bishop takes c3. Because after taking, we could, I guess f5 could be very interesting. Like, tell me, how is this bishop going to do anything the rest of the game? Oh, it's amazing. And now after knight f6, knight d4, white just surrenders, yeah, strategically. And basically, Nimzovich will be very proud of us, yeah? So, I mean, we don't even need to do that, but we could, like just for you to understand why is this very interesting. And this was played by none other than Rapport. So again, we have to be resourceful and understand why Bishop G4 straightforward is not that good because we don't have any active plan, but here we do with this knight H5. Yeah. So after knight H4, White tries to annoy us, and after Bishop D7, H3, Rook E8, Knight F3. What is going on? What just happened? The idea is that this position arises from also from Rook E8, and here White plays H3. And here after Bishop F5, Bishop D3 is the main take for White. And if we try to exchange everything, this position objectively is fine for White because we are not in time to defend everything, but it's very difficult in practice. For instance, Giri himself played against Rapport recently, and after Queen C2, Rook E8. I mean, White has some kind of very precise move order. I mean, I don't even remember it now. Like it involves some G4 and then some creative stuff. Like again, this is a sideline, very practical one. It's very unlikely that anyone has prep here. Even Giri himself, the guy that knows everything, that does courses that he doesn't play, but he knows everything even. So played Bishop G5, Bishop F4, forcing Queen C7 might be a bit more precise, but yeah, after here, I mean, Black already achieved everything and a draw was agreed. Yeah. So Rook E1 is a bit better, and after knight E4, Bishop G5, you need to know, knight D2, G4. I mean, I give you this line because, okay, it's objectively the best for White, but now I would recommend you to give up a piece and then just have this crazy position. Like the knight comes, the king side, the king is very unsafe, and we have a lot of compensation, I'd say. Again, this is a sideline. This is super precise for White. White needs to know very well what he's doing, what he or he's doing. I mean, it's too much, I'd say. So yeah, I have it here as because I suggested with White in my course, and yeah, it can happen, but again, take into account that this is a very healthy alternative, I would say, for Black, and it's not easy at all. Like you could also play Bishop G4 and this stuff, and it's not as good. Yeah. So for instance, now Bishop F5. Now, for instance, H3 wouldn't be that good because now knight E4 could be good. Yeah, and we will be very, very happy to exchange this. So let's go back. So imagine your opponent is like, come on, but I don't want to exchange the knights. I don't want to allow you Bishop G4. So he would play H3, he or she, yeah, and then you will be able to play Bishop F5 and knight E4. Again, so it's very difficult for White to create any kind of threat here, and that's why I feel this line gives you a lot of room for safer positions. You've seen how basically we are not in danger at all. You've seen how you need to know a lot of the main course. That's why this is not an alternative. This is a complement. Again, don't play this blindly, because if White takes with the c-pawn, in any case, you will be like, oh damn, I did not see that coming. But yeah, I feel it's a great addition to the course, and I feel you will have a lot of practical games and a lot of quick games, even rapid blitz. You can test it all the time, and it gives you some flexibility that is very well deserved. And usually, as I stated before, White doesn't have any kind of experience on these positions. So you get the advantage of here that you are taking your opponent out of the comfort zone, and you are creating a very interesting gameplay. So yeah, I feel this works very well with everything I explained in the course. I had troubles in practice facing it. I mean, I knew taking with the e-pawn, it's supposed to be better, but it also implies that White has, let's say, a minimal advantage, a very strategical, thin advantage. And if White makes a mistake, we are back on the track, and we are having a great and safe position. So yeah, I really like it. I don't know. Hope you enjoyed and tested it. Tested a lot. If you have trouble playing against f4 or against bishop f4 and h3, I highly recommend you to check it out, to test it, and to feel free. And it will complement very well the rest of what's been shown in the course. So yeah, as always, enjoy playing the Benoni, have fun, and see you in another video.